Well, today's episode is all about communication and influence, two critical skills for anyone who wants to make an impact in business and beyond. We're sitting down with a leading expert who's here to share how you can enhance your influence and lead with authenticity. This episode is a must listen for event professionals, entrepreneurs, and business owners. Stay tuned and enjoy our conversation.
Welcome to the Events Demystified Podcast, where we demystify the world of in-person, virtual, and hybrid events, AV production, and AI technology by sharing practical tips, tricks, and strategies to help your event succeed. This podcast is brought to you by Trifan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency that caters to event professionals, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. We specialize in AV and AI education, integration, automation, and implementation, all based on our Fit for Events framework, which focuses on futuristic AV production, innovative AI technology, thriving audiences, and empowering behind-the-scenes teams. And I'm your host, Anka Platon Trifan, with over 2 decades of hands-on experience in event production, event management, and now AI technologies and cybersecurity.
Well, friends, welcome to another episode of the Events Demystified Podcast brought to you by Trifan Events. I'm your host, Anka Platon Trifan. Today, we have a powerhouse of a guest who's ready to transform how you think about influence and communication. Our guest today is Stacey Hanke, the CEO of Stacey Hanke Inc. As a leading expert in communication and influence, Stacey is the author of Influence Redefined, and she's worked with top leaders, teams, and businesses across the globe, helping them communicate with confidence and impact. Her work focuses on practical tools and strategies that can elevate anyone's ability to influence effectively, a topic that resonates deeply with our audience of event professionals, meeting planners, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. So without further ado, let's welcome Stacey to our conversation. Welcome to the show, Stacey. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you for trusting me with your followers. I've been following you and checking out your podcast. This is like high stakes, and I'm so honored to get a chance to be here with you.
So before we jump into the art of influence, which I feel like it's such an important topic, and I feel like there's so much to demystify there, I would love to first kick things off with a lighter question. And that's something that I sort of like bring my guest into the known of our audience and share maybe one thing that people might be surprised to learn about you, especially considering the strong leadership presence that you bring to the table.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for those that know me, they hear me talking about it all the time. But this whole idea of entrepreneurship, I grew up on a cattle farm. When people hear what I do, they'll ask me, did you ever own a pair of bib overhauls? I'm like, I don't even have a pair of those. I never had anything like that. What got me to running the business that I do now is growing up with my mom and dad. If you know anything about farming, it is hardcore discipline and just a lot of hard work. But that really got me to where I am today.
I love it. I grew up on a mini farm. If you come from a country like Romania, which I have, there's always some type of mini farm that you're raising animals, you are harvesting your own food, you basically live off the land as maybe it was intended to be before we had supermarkets. Everything was very basic, but also very natural. I kind of miss that, to be honest. Although you're right, the hard work I don't miss that, but it's what made me who I am today and instilled in me that commitment I have to my work. There's resilience that comes with hardship, right? So I'm very curious because you have the book Influence Redefined, which is such a powerful resource. I'm interested what inspired you to write it in the first place, any of your upbringing, harsh upbringing in work hard, and on any of that is what inspired you, and what is maybe the biggest misconception that people might have when they think about or when they talk about influence?
My answer is pretty similar for both those questions. So I'm going to start with your second one, or like, what is one of the misperceptions around influence, which is where Influence Redefined was created. I needed to define what it was because through my work, through my team's work with executives, I was intrigued by the lack of awareness a leader has with how much influence they really have rather than what they believe to be true. Throughout years of corporate training jobs, I was training everything from customer service to time management to leadership skills. I realized that no matter how intelligent you are in your industry or how much experience you have in your role, if you cannot communicate a message verbally and non-verbally in a way that is consistent with each other, that people can follow you every step of the way, your LinkedIn profile, your years of experience, it doesn't really matter. After coaching, training, and speaking at events for a number of years, Influence Redefined was created because I realized a lot of people don't even know what influence really is. I'm talking true influence, that the consistency of it. A lot of that book talks about the how-tos of how to make sure that your personal brand, executive presence is one that you're proud of Monday to Monday, but how do you do that? And then it's not just about your messaging, especially now in today's hybrid world. It's a combination of every word you speak, how people experience you, and are those two consistent now during every conversation, every possible medium?
I think the biggest misconception people have about influence, especially for someone that might say, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. What kind of influence do I have in my world? That's the good news. You
Yes,
do have influence, even if you don't have a PhD and didn't finish your college degree and ended up staying at home to raise kids. The
right.
influence that you have in the generations that will follow you, that's not something to not give importance and attention to, because regardless of how educated or not you think you are, you have influence. And yes, the other side of that, the type of influence that you have, it is related and direct proportional to how you communicate. And because, as you mentioned, you've worked with leaders and teams across various industries, I'm curious, in your experience, what were some of the common pitfalls that you've seen when it comes to the communication part? How can event professionals, because that's our main audience, but also entrepreneurs and small business owners avoid this type of pitfalls in their own interactions?
Yes, there's three. The first is we don't know what we don't know.
Mm.
We've been given a lot of false feedback throughout our life, which sounds like, good, nice job, that was great, which is absolutely meaningless. It gets you nowhere. Number two, the lack of brevity. There is something to be said about we feel like people need to know the world about us, that they need to know the years of experience that we have versus really being able to adapt in the moment to our listeners. And number three is not knowing the power of, I call it eye connection rather than eye contact, the power of eye connection with tying to trust. It's not so much your messaging or your years of experience that build trust. It really is, how do people feel connected or lack of connection with you? And I think the lack of eye connection will always give you away because it communicates you don't care. It communicates that maybe your email, your texting is more important than who you're trying to influence.
How do you
Those are,
overcome that in cultures that eye connection is seen as a disrespect?
yes, that is about adapting. Then we go back to brevity. You've really got to be adapting your message on the fly. And the multitude of diverse audiences that I present to, that is the first step I always take, is tell me everything you know about this culture. Out of all the skills my team and I teach, there's about 10 skills that we teach. Think body language. Eye connection is the one, you're right, where depending on the culture, you need to be careful. Is direct
Mhm.
eye connection acceptable or not? Part of being influential is identifying your listeners, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And we
Mhm.
don't even do that. We just go on Zoom call after Zoom call, or we go through our checklist at the end of the day. And if you reflect back, how much of each conversation did you give the ultimate elevated focus to make sure the message is right for you versus if I was speaking to someone else or 10 other people today?
It's very interesting what you're saying right there. It doesn't necessarily have to be just virtual, especially in person. It's so important. I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers, and she mentioned how she went to this event. The CEO of one particular brand was there, and they've been friends for 20 years, the type of friends that go to each other's Thanksgiving dinners. She mentioned how she was hurt when this person said, "Hi, how are you?" Like the niceties of seeing someone after
Right.
a period of time. And then their eyes glance automatically to the next person. And from that moment, that broke this disconnect of like, we're really good friends, and you can allocate me more than literally 3 seconds of your time, and you're already ready to go and have the next meet
Mhm.
and greet. And it kind of touched me in a sense that to her, that was something personal. Like, we've known each other. I know you're a big cheese CEO and all the things, but like, we're really good friends, and you couldn't give me more than 3 seconds like you give anyone else, right? So it goes
Right.
back to that eye connection, goes back to that power of influence that you have over people around you just through your body language, right?
And the scary part about all this is I'm sure there's people listening to us right now saying, well, this is so common sense. What I've learned over my 24 years of doing this work is common sense does not mean common practice. We are so unaware of truly how we come across and how someone's experiences us, because most of the time we'll go off either our years of experience, we'll go off of our comfort level.
Yeah.
Well, I do this all the time. I know what I'm talking about. I'm comfortable with this person. And feeling does not tie to necessarily determining your level of influence. That's what Influence Redefined really talks about, getting really deep into the weeds of what it means to be influential, from your body language to your messaging.
Absolutely. So, as we looked at that one example, and where influence is not just in what you say, a lot of people know how to craft and say the right things, but it's also how you say it and how you present yourself, right?
Yes.
If you're a small business owner, if you're someone often put in a position to lead and having to communicate effectively, what are some of the key elements they should focus on to boost their personal and professional presence or branding?
That's a big one, is the brevity. Always start the conversation with a very wide, open-ended question. The question I'm not referring to is, how are you? Because it'll shut that conversation down. Versus, I'll give you an example. When I get on a sales call and I don't know this person, I have to figure out what their why is. I'll always start with a question like, what is currently happening in your organization that led you to want to have a conversation today? What
Mm,
happens is you open up that door. I'm being really mindful in my focus and my listening to grab key points of what they're sharing. Those key points are now going to be my next question. That also allows you to have brevity. I think we've lost the ability to communicate with empathy over the last several years.
mm.
A great place to show that or to demonstrate empathy is asking those very open-ended questions. Number two, I would highly recommend, if you haven't audio record it yourself or video record it yourself, you can easily do it on your phone. If you don't do that on a regular basis, it will always be hard to accomplish brevity, eye connection, whatever it is that you want to accomplish or make better, because you're constantly going off of how you feel versus your phone. The video is the eyes and ears of your listeners.
Yeah.
If there's one action step that your followers take from this conversation today, that one will be a game changer in their personal and their professional life, is seeing themselves, hearing themselves through the eyes and ears of their listeners versus getting so caught into, I feel good, I know how this is going to go. As brutal as I still think recording myself is and watching it because I pick up on everything I don't like, the advantage of doing that step is, for example, when I'm in a conversation with you right now, I'm so aware of anything that I'm being coached on right now with my communication, anything that I've been watching. I'm so conscious of it that I'm coaching myself in the moment so that you can't hear it or you can't see it.
If you want to do that, get on a video podcast and then go back and edit yourself
Yes.
for 5 years of weekly episodes. Nothing teaches you more about how many flaws you have
True.
than
And
that.
I have
It's so brutal.
it is. And everyone always asks me, does it get any easier? It doesn't get easier because you get more and more aware. So you get more critical. The benefit, though, what happens is I've learned over the years, what doesn't challenge you will never change you.
Yeah.
The power of seeing yourself, and I'm sure you can relate to this, power of seeing and hearing yourself so many times. I can't think of any better development because you'll see something that you don't like and you'll say, I am never doing that again. Or you'll see something that you're like, I kind of like that. I need to make it better. I need to elevate it.
Yeah. I always like to say that you will never grow unless you put yourself through something uncomfortable. And that uncomfortable varies from person to person and from season to season, right? Because in order to grow and overcome something that you struggle with, say, in one area, hopefully in the next season, you've grown that and then you can challenge yourself in some other areas so you keep growing, right? What I would like to maybe give some helping steps for anyone that they're not there yet. For them, confidence and putting themselves out there is a really big struggle.
Okay.
How do you overcome that if not just you're an introvert, but really struggle with putting yourself out there to even be at the place where you can start growing?
I think that if I was in those shoes, I would take a strategy session by myself. I believe what we write, we invite in our life. I would start writing down, what is my personal brand? How do I want to be perceived Monday to Monday? And just really do a big brainstorm. A great way to do that is through adjectives: confident, trustworthy. Then I would look at the next 30 days. What am I willing to do, even if it's small steps every day? What am I willing to do for the next 30 days to get closer to that perception? Now, that list might be also a conversation I would have with those in my personal life that know me really well. I'd ask, in my case, my husband, my nieces, my sister, someone on my team. I'm sure we all have someone in our personal life that can't wait to give us feedback. You asked for that. But I would ask them, hey, I want to come across confident and trustworthy. What do I do or say where that comes across for you? Or what am I doing and saying where I jeopardize that perception? I don't even know I'm doing it. And I might take the next 30 days at brunch with them, just hanging out at home, at dinner. And I did this early in my career where I would ask, I don't have children, but I have nieces. And nieces are the best because they have no filter and they'll tell you, they love to coach. And I literally would ask them, we're just going to have a conversation. It would just be about anything day to day. I want you to coach me on this.
I love that exercise.
It's simple. Here's what's great about everything I'm throwing out there. You'll never hear me say to your followers, every Tuesday, block off 1 to 2 p.m. and you have to practice that whole hour. This is about not being perfect with communication, just being conscious that when you're going down a road that is distracting, hard to follow, you know you are, and you can switch to get back online in position. Every conversation we have, it's an opportunity to practice. So that's what I did initially. Then I built a little bit more confidence. That's when I started to pull this out. I started recording myself, and it was a game changer. I just received a recording of a keynote I did last week that I need to open and take a look at. And I know I will rip it apart.
You'll cringe for a bit and then you'll get over yourself.
Or even this recording, when you send it to me, I will sit and I will watch it. When you're ready for it, I will take a piece of paper and divide it into 3 columns. What worked, what didn't work, what am I willing to commit to make the change? I'll do it at least once a month to get that commitment down. You can see I go off always by about 30-day marks. If I worked with a professional golfer and they've been playing golf for 20 years, I come in, I start coaching them. Their confidence is just going to feel like I smashed it. It's going to take practice, momentum, constant swinging of the golf club, where suddenly you reach that point where you're like, okay, I got this. And you'll start to build the confidence. But you have to take steps backwards before you're going to build confidence forward. That's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow because our bodies, we don't want to be uncomfortable. Just trust the process that when you're getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, that's when real, true development is happening.
Absolutely. I go back to my training as a natural bodybuilder. And in the beginning, I remember how hard it was to go back like a month back in my progress to try to see the progress, right? Because you don't see a lot of progress in the beginning. You put in the work day in, day out. You build commitment, consistency, and resilience, which are great qualities to keep going, but you won't see a lot of progress. It will take years before you start seeing the progress. But if you have that mindset built where you're going to commit and put in the time, no matter if you see it with your eyes or you don't, what's really interesting about that is when you go back in time and look at where you started. Me as a natural bodybuilder working towards a new competition, like I see where I started and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this was the person that started. And here's the person that is still working for another goal, for a different improvement, because it's like seasons, right? You go from season to season, you go from one division to another. So the goals change, the milestones change. Same way with whatever it is you're working towards, you know that you put in the time, you're going to see that progress, and allow yourself the grace to be able to not be that great in the moment, to really suck. And if you keep at it, you will see that progress over time. I used to be afraid, and I would just shut down speaking in front of people. My throat would dry out, my mind would go blank. I would have nothing to say and just freeze under the stage light. And I knew that I really wanted to use that platform as a way to speak my truth, speak my message. And I'm like, how do I get better? Well, through showing up, through practice. At first, it was cringeworthy. But as you keep insisting on those areas, I like that you divide in those 3 columns and you look in a critical way, but without putting yourself down. I think it's important to also always look through the lens of empathy and grace, even at yourself. Give yourself the grace to not be great at something that you don't know, and be allowed the time necessary to grow through it. When we think about redefining influence, how do you see this world of digital communication impeding connection? Do you have any strategies or tips that you can share where you could adapt your communication based on whom you're dealing with, based on the platform, so you can still maintain the influence even in a virtual setting versus a digital setting versus in person?
Well, that's a perfect transition because book number 3 is launching on November 12th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's titled Influence Elevated. So it's a continuation of Influence Redefined. Influence Elevated has been 4 years of my research on exactly what you're talking about.
I'm sure COVID had nothing to do with that.
Nothing at all. The book is focused on the research that I did around how influence has changed and what it really requires now to influence consistently Monday to Monday. The biggest change is there's a lot of noise. There's more ways to connect than ever before, yet we're more disconnected than ever before. When you're trying to connect with someone, how do you stand out from the noise? The multitude of conversations they've already had before they have it with you, the distractions that are going on that you can't see in their space. And then you raise the distraction of, are you consistent when you show up on this platform versus when you're in person? And to me, that is what really makes someone who's influential stand out. Someone who understands this idea of consistency. I've worked with so many leaders that I'll meet them in person and I think about trust, confidence, and credibility. Then they show up on a Zoom conversation and I'm like, who are you? The setup is so terrible and you see only their head, you see their ceiling fan. Like or they don't turn their camera on at all. Like we just lost this concept of, because we've gone digital and there's so much virtual hybrid interaction, you have to work harder than you ever had before to make sure that how you show up is the same experience no matter which medium you're using for that individual. Because you and I both know, especially the work that you do, trust, influence doesn't happen in one interaction. It's a series of interactions you have with this person that are consistent. And now you just have so many more elements to try to connect through. It's made it a lot harder. So the Influence Elevator, the book really goes into like how to run a hybrid environment, how to influence through that situation. But most importantly, how are you being heard and seen through the noise? Not just in the moment, but how are you remembered long after the conversation has occurred?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of the flip side of that, though, as well, because, for example, especially younger generation that grew up on the internet. I'm one of the internet babies. I was on the internet from 5th grade. I feel like then there's also this other side of the conversation where you might have an amazing digital presence. You might have a lot of influence online, but then you do not know how to translate that to in-person interactions. There has to be a 4th book coming.
Yes. Well, and we talk about that in the book too. I share in my keynote, especially when I'm presenting to an audience that has just grown up in the virtual world. At some point, you have to have a face-to-face conversation. Even if you're never going to an office, at some point, you're going to need it. And I think just look at what's happening in the media. How many companies now are saying, you need to come back at least a day.
Yeah.
So many of my corporate clients are saying, we need you there at least once a week. I was talking to a large pharmaceutical company here outside of Chicago, and they were wanting people to come back 3 days a week. One of the leaders I was talking to said, if you decide not to come back 1 day a week, when a promotion comes available, you need to understand you're not going to be someone I'm going to think about. Another client, I want to be very clear too, because I'm all for the flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what's come out of this, to be able to work at home and in the office. One of my clients said it best. We're being very loud and clear with all employees saying, we're not asking you to come back even just 1 day a week because we don't trust you that you're not getting work done. That's not the conversation here. The conversation is we cannot connect. We cannot grow relationships if we never see each other. And that's what the last 4 years have totally, you can see I'm so passionate about this. When I teach hybrid, if you're leading a hybrid board meeting and you have people in the boardroom with you, and then you've got some of your employees coming in virtual. Always remember, there's 3 conversations the virtual group will always miss. They miss that chatter, that conversation when you're walking to the boardroom.
Yeah.
So the meeting's already happening, but you're going to miss all that if you're virtual.
Yeah.
You're going to miss any of the side conversations, not just the words. When you're in a board meeting and you might look at someone and give them a head nod and you miss that. The most important conversation of all that you miss is when you're done and you log off of Zoom and they're still in the room talking.
Yep.
There's just no way that we can replace that. Or if we're in the office together and I happen to pass you in the hallway and I remember, oh, I have this question, and we solve it in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Versus
100 of emails going back and forth.
Or I've got to try to get on your calendar. We're going to schedule a 30-minute Zoom call. But by the time I get on Zoom with you, I've already resolved it. One friend of mine is a VP of a big technical company. He said he didn't want to go back to the office. He thought, I didn't think I ever had to go back to the office until I did. He said, the one thing that was really interesting is when I had a problem or I needed help with coming up with a solution, I just got up from my desk, walked next door to my peer. We resolved it in 2 minutes, done, and I moved right on. He said the amount of productivity in those type of situations could never replicate it on Zoom. So it's understanding that, yeah, you work at home and use the productivity there. At some point, though, why do you think events came back? When I was just doing the keynotes, it was all virtual. And the minute that we were given permission to go back to conferences and events, back in 21, one of my clients said, because I was presenting to a hybrid audience, would you please just bring up the concept of, for those of you who are in person, imagine how many conversations you would not have had in this 2-day event if you were not here.
Totally. Now, there is definitely the benefit to that. I mean, Amazon is bringing their whole workforce back to in
Right.
person. Obviously, there's some pros and cons to that. I still
Right.
believe flexibility and finding a model that can sustain both lifestyles is
Yes.
important. How do we manage to bring still that connection, the in-person connection you so passionately speak about? For companies and agencies, especially in the event world, they all work remote. Like I am working with an agency that has over 600 employees and there is no headquarter. They all work remote.
Sure.
They get together on site for events. So maybe that's when they get some face-to-face interaction, but not all teams do, right? Depends which team
Right.
you're part of. How do you overcome that? Are there any strategies or any tips that you would give to someone that is dealing with a virtual workforce like that to create connection, to keep culture, to be
Yes.
able to build trust? It takes in person. That's the reason why we love to go to events, because you get those in-person meetings with people that maybe you've known on LinkedIn for years, but now there's a different level once you get to meet them.
Yeah. You have to put in a lot of effort. We are all virtual. My team lives in different locations, but I put in the effort of a lot of one-on-one time via Zoom. When we get together as a team, we personalize the first part of the call and asking open-ended questions. One in particular that I love is everyone quickly goes around and shares what's one positive focus in your personal life, professional and personal life. So you get to know a lot about them. Every Zoom call that I have with my team is highly interactive. Everyone is participating, cameras on,
Showing
no
up
more
dressed to a meeting.
excuses. Right. I mean, I love what you said. You said something about showing up earlier. And when I talk about executive presence, I always tell people I'm working with that if you want executive presence, you've got to be present. You have to really engage and take what you would do with someone if you were in person. You have to recreate that in the virtual platform. I think it's harder to do because it takes a lot more effort and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
If you are at a company where they do have maybe just once a year an event, do everything in your power to be there and meet as many people as you can. My husband had gotten a new job 2 years ago, and his company is all virtual. The very first week on the job, they had their big annual convention. He went. Now, he had been, his previous job had not been in person for 2 years. He came back and said, I take back everything I say about how I can build relationships and never have to meet these folks in person. Doing that week-long event, he said, I have a whole new appreciation of meeting my coworkers in person again.
Absolutely.
So you have to put in the effort. If there's just no possible way, you're never going to meet in person. Is it once a week? Is that too often? Is it every other week or once a month? You get a 30-minute, 20-minute Zoom call with someone that you don't know. Does that take effort? You bet. But your connections and your influence, to me, it's worth it. You're worth putting in that effort.
Before we continue, I want to give a shout out to the team at TreeFan Events. We are not just an event planning and production agency. We are focused on integrating innovative AV solutions, AI strategies, and wellness-focused practices through our Fit for Events framework. Whether you're planning live, virtual, or hybrid events, the team at TreeFan Events is here to provide personalized planning, strategic design, and seamless technology management to ensure everything runs flawlessly. And now, we are offering AI-powered workshops to help you grow your business, build stronger teams, and elevate your events to the next level. If you want to learn more about how the team at TreeFan Events can help make your event unforgettable, visit treefanevents.com.
Continue our conversation, Stacey. As someone who consults with top executives, you often focus on building authentic communication. What advice do you have for our listeners on how to balance authenticity with professionalism, especially if you work in a high-stake environment and for a high-stake client, a high-stake meeting? You get the gist.
Authenticity is one of those words we've heard a lot. I get questions around this often. What does it really mean when it comes to influence? It means being consistent. When I get interviewed by a potential client, I want to make sure that how they experience me here is no surprise when they meet me in person. Over the years, when I show up in person, people will say, "Oh, you look just like your photos," or "Wow, it's like I know you." We just get
That right there is such a turn off. Like when you meet someone on LinkedIn, their profile is 10 years old.
yes. We do new photo shoot. I just did another photo shoot. We do a photo shoot once a year. I don't like going through that process. It's that consistency of how we show up. Consistency plus authenticity equals trust.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even your messaging. It's simple things like follow through. How many times have you sent an email to someone and it takes them days to respond? Yet
Exactly.
when they want something from you, they want it like that. And I'm like, wait a second, where's that authenticity? The other part of the authenticity is this is why, whatever you're practicing, whether you want to have more brevity, you want to practice eye connection, you need to be practicing those skills in your day-to-day conversations. The big mistake that a lot of us make, I have a big sales pitch or I have a big board meeting, high stakes conversation tomorrow. And tonight, I'll practice. Well, it's too late because you're going to go into that conversation and it's going to be mechanical. You're not going to sound authentic, meaning you might not have energy in your voice. You might not have gestures, whatever is going on. But when there's a difference of how you communicate in your day-to-day, how you communicate in your work, people are going to read through that.
Absolutely.
That's why I go back to, you've got to be practicing your communication all the time.
Now, for someone that, let's just say, they're struggling on, again, going back to the original question, like how to be authentic, how to present themselves in a setting. Like, let's just take, for example, LinkedIn, right? And to be connecting with someone else on that level, on a digital platform, you have to bring parts of yourself as well. I honestly don't trust anyone that just posts their accomplishments and their next thing, but they don't talk anything at all about personal struggles or just life even in general, right? It's like there's this wall and you don't really know this person because what they put out there is just one facet of who they are. Coming from COVID, like we have a different hunger of knowing someone on a different level, no matter what the platform is. In person, I would like to know beyond just your position, beyond what your responsibility is on a day-to-day basis. What do you do for fun on a Saturday? What are you passionate about outside of work? What brings fire in your soul when you talk about one thing or another? I remember struggling with this in the beginning because I wanted to, part of my personal branding, how do I make myself approachable? Because again, there's that sometimes people that have built a following and have influence, and they are also hard to be approached because you don't have anything to connect with on a personal level unless they let you in, unless they open the door and share some of them. So I came up with Personal Post Friday. On a Friday, outside of my regular content days, where on a Monday I would post about something, Tuesday about something, I had those buckets that I would stick to. I wanted to make it more personable on a Friday to be that personal post, right? And share things from my upbringing, my culture, things I struggle with, things I've overcome. My fitness journey is a huge part of who I am. So that was another topic I would touch on, and create those parallels into business, into entrepreneurship, into the lessons learned under the barbell. How would you advise someone that is unsure how to put themselves out there without sharing too much? I guess there is a thing where some people struggle with. I
Right.
remember I was in person with someone, meeting them after a long digital connection, and we were having dinner. But when they started sharing, it was like, how do I close the floodgates now?
Right. So there's so much to unpack here. There's three things I want to go back to. First, your comment about authenticity, and then how do you know what to share? The part about being authentic is being able to adapt your message on the fly to what works for them, because that communicates that you're listening mindfully. And storytelling. I'm not saying a nursery rhyme storytelling. I'm saying put a story around your conversation. For example, the adaptability part. If I get on a call and my client wants to talk about what they did this past weekend, that's giving me the cue. They want to socialize a little bit. They don't want to know. They are all about, I've got 30 minutes with you. Let's cut to the chase. So I'm going to adapt how I kick off that call or the type of open-ended question I ask based on how they kick this call off. And then throughout, I go into the storytelling. So I'll give you another example. I received a call this week from a leader that's considering me being their coach to mentor them. And when he was talking about how does this recording work? I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable with that. And I said to him, I totally get it. Here's where it's helped to me. Here's where I have fallen on my face, but here's where the return came out. So I throw in a story around my message, sometimes about my vulnerability or experience without putting myself in a spotlight. I call it mindful listening. I talk a little bit more about it in Influence Elevate It. So much of it is being so mindful of what's in front of you and what are they saying. Let's go back to the basics, by the way, 80-20. My clients will speak 80%. I only speak 20% of it. So I'm constantly thinking on my feet of what works for them. Now, when in doubt, your second question, how do you know how much to throw out there? I always test it with someone on my team. I've got quite a few coaches in my life. I test it with them first. And it goes back to, remember when we were talking about take a piece of paper and write down your why? Part of that answer is, why do I communicate the way I do? What specifically do I want people to think of me? And that'll also help you determine how much do you share or how little do you share. I don't just throw stuff out on social media. There's a thought process that goes with it. It always comes back to, what is my brand? What do I want people to perceive me? And if you follow me on LinkedIn, I do videos once a week, just me talking. It's really identifying where you sit in your industry and the people that you want to connect with.
I love that. So much to unpack there. I have to highlight the importance of mentorship, coaches, surrounding yourself with people that know you, have your best interest in mind, but are also there to speak the truth. One example, a couple of months ago, my husband lost his job. He was laid off from a 10-year position as an engineer. I wanted to write a LinkedIn post without sounding desperate, to just highlight his expertise and try to make the connection through my large network to other potential employers in his area of expertise. At the same time, I'm also feeling desperate because I'm like, oh, shoot, what's going to happen now? So before I wrote that post, I went to two of my closest friends and I said, okay, you've got to read this for me and give me your honest feedback. What does this come across as? Because this is what I'm trying to portray. I just don't know if that's what's being portrayed, because I am one person that jumps into action. If there's something to be done about this, you better believe that I'm going to do something about it, right? So I'm ready to hit the ground running. It was good to have their perspectives, because you might have the best interest in mind, or you might have the best motive, whatever it is that you're doing, what you're doing or writing, but the perception or what they receive on the other side might be a completely different message, right? What somebody perceives can be colored in so many different ways based on where they are, based on their biases, based on what they perceive you to be, all those things. So having that feedback, it completely redefined my messaging to be able to still put something out there that was closer to my original intent without having my emotions seeping through without me even realizing. So to what you said, try to find yourself some people that you can trust, that you can go to and ask them those honest questions and be open to receiving their feedback. Because I could have also said, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I wanted. I'm going to go and run with this because I know it's good, right?
Yes.
Not all is true.
It isn't. I have both my sisters are part of my company, and my older sister is the more logical one. Anytime I see an email coming through or I've got to respond to a client, I feel I have to respond immediately. So there's emotion there, whether it's positive or negative. She's the one that talks me off the cliff. And I love her for it. I despise her sometimes for it, because she's got this talent to say to me, sleep on it. Don't make a move yet. And sure enough, the next day I come back to it. I look at it totally different. But it's finding people like that. And sometimes it is people in your personal life. I keep bringing that up because in your personal life, your husband, my sisters, my husband, they know me. They know who I am just day in and day out. So they also really protect what I'm preaching around this, have a reputation that's consistent. But I think it all circles back. If there would be two things that your followers could do today, well, the first is the courage to be vulnerable, to see themselves through the eyes and ears of their listeners. That would be the very first step. And then the second is feedback from others that you trust. I make that number two because this is probably always the best feedback you can get. There's going to be feedback you receive. You're going to like it. You're not going to like it. You still get to decide which one you want to take. But seeing it and hearing it, you'll figure it out. I've learned over the years of doing this work, like watching your podcast, how my brand sometimes will change, or how my why has changed even over the last 4 years. I would have never picked that up if I wasn't experiencing myself on a regular basis.
Absolutely. I like the story with your sister being the cool-headed. Nowadays, I leverage AI to be my level-headed assistant when I do not have to emotionally answer an email. I can draft something practical as possible and respectful without me having to get my emotion mixed up in whatever the topic was. So I'm like, save me so much grief.
That's right. Yeah, there's something to be said about that. Really having coaches. And I always reflect back to, in my free time, I've been teaching fitness classes a very, very long time. And over the years, I've realized to run a company like you've got to be fit. That's one thing that is priority for me, is my health. Well, I teach at this local gym, and January of this year, I was there getting ready to teach. I hear a new potential member come to the front counter, and they're ready to sign that contract. And they ask, before they sign, they look up from the paper and they said, "Can you guarantee this is going to work?" And they're super serious about it. And the person they were working with, the member service rep, she said, "I cannot promise this is going to work. But what I can promise, if you put in the work, it'll work."
Yep.
And that's the tough thing about elevating our influence. It's a journey. There's no destination when done. But I love what you said. It's giving yourself grace, that there'll be times you're going to fall on your face. There's going to be times you're going to leave that meeting saying, "I shouldn't have said that." That's part of the learning.
Yeah.
Write it down. Document it so you don't fall the same way again. It's the learning from it.
When I talk about progressive overload, as someone that has been in the fitness world, you know what that means. You constantly grow, you constantly challenge yourself, but you also have those rest and recharge days. That's the grace that you need to allocate to yourself to be able to bounce back up. Because if you just go 100 miles an hour, and I'm one of those people that I can go 100 miles an hour and never stop, you don't allow your muscles to grow. You don't allow yourself to grow, right? So you have to be able to also stop and give yourself that time, that period of grace to analyze what happened, how it happened, and then what are the steps to move forward from there. As we come to a close to our conversation, but also looking ahead, I would be curious to hear from you, Stacey. How do you see the landscape of communication and influence evolving over the next few years, especially in the light of AI? We can ignore how much it's been emerging in the last few years. What are some things that our audience should be focusing on in order to stay effective, relevant, authentic?
Yeah, relevant, keep learning AI. Right? Just when I think, okay, I understand this, something new comes out and I'm back to it. I think that's safe to say, no matter what technology comes out. When I think about someone who's influential, I see someone that's very innovative, someone that has a lot of knowledge around the little things. They can use that in their storytelling, in their analogies. So keep learning, no matter what, just keep learning, whether it's AI, whatever technology it might be. I wish I could predict the future, but what I've seen through the research I've done in the last 4 years, with the changes that have happened with the influence, individuals who truly have this ability to connect, to build trust through their body language, through their messaging, and all that's consistent, I think they are really going to excel. They are the ones that are really going to stand out. And I can only go off of research, right? I can also only go off of what our clients say. I'll give you an example why I think this is true. A number of our large clients are coming to me saying, teach some of our new hires, teach them how to follow up to an email. I'm talking this. There was one the other day. Can you teach them on what to say when they first come on Zoom. I'm like, you're serious? Really? It's an issue. I've been doing business for a long time, 24 years of running this company. The pendulum is always swinging. And I really do. I see it. I see the people in my circle who are so successful. They are the ones that have this charisma. And it's not because they're an introvert or extrovert, or they've had more experience than someone else, or their generation determines it. They get the power of making someone feel good through connection, feeling like you are the most important person right now. I'm going to give all of my focus on you. Someone who follows up, it's what seems to be basic skills. We're losing that due to all the technology. But again, it goes back to, we will all need to communicate. Simon Sinek, watch any of his stuff. He's pretty similar to some of the things that my team and I talk about. There was something I saw in him not too long ago. He said, everyone talks to people, no matter what your industry is. You will need to talk to someone eventually for promotion reasons, even if you don't want to be promoted. If you do want to take it up a notch or two, the mentees that come to us are coming because they're already a leader. They're wanting to be the next CFO. They're wanting to be the next COO. And our buyer will say the way they communicated yesterday is not going to work if they want to be promoted.
Facts. Stacey, if there was one core principle to conclude this amazing conversation and something that you could share with our listeners about influence that they could start applying today, what would that be?
Do the 3 action steps. Write down your why. Get clear on your personal brand, your reputation. Second, start watching your playbacks. And maybe you start off slow. Just do audios where you audio record yourself and then listen to what it sounded like versus how you felt, the comparison. And number 3 is the feedback. Do it once a day. Ask for feedback once a day for the next 7 days. That'll be enough for you to create the momentum to see the benefit for greater reward. This isn't about perfection. This is about being conscious of how people perceive you.
Thank you so much for sharing those valuable insights. For anyone that is listening and would like to follow your work, connect with you, learn more about your training programs, where can they find you?
Yes, it's all on our website, which I'll share in a moment. Everyone, we've given you a link, if you can put in the show notes, to get a free complimentary ebook of Influence Redefined, which was the first book. So that is a gift I want to give to everyone. You can find us is the website. It's my name, Stacey with an EY, HANKEINC.com, or social media. We are constantly pushing out resources to just be an accountability partner, a resource from afar.
Thank you so much again, Stacey, for sharing your expertise with us. For all of our listeners, please connect with Stacey online, follow her on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening, for joining us. If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, rate, leave a review. It really helps us keep bringing impactful content to you. Until next time, keep honing your influence, stay authentic, and continue demystifying events. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other professionals like yourself. If you're interested in learning more about TreeFan events, including our future AI education talks and workshops, or to see how we can support your next event, book a free 20-minute consultation through the link in the episode notes. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and social media for updates on future episodes, industry insights, AI news and tips, and more. And if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out.